Hello again, CyberRend here. Today we're going to be going over one of my favorite decks. Now this is actually a deck I've played before. It's a Chaos-based deck. The only difference is now there's a lot more cards I can use, and I think that it works a little bit better than what I could get it down to back in the days of Invasion of Chaos. So straight away you're going to see a few things just from how I got it laid out down there. And I'm just going to go into it, yeah. So starting with the monsters, there's 20 monsters in here. So now we've got the main heavy hitters. We've got Golden Homunculus. I'm running 2 of those. And 3 Gren, maju, Eiza. This is one of my favorite cards of all time. Before I used to use cards like Bazoo the Soul Eater and Dimension Box and Soul Release just to get cards from the graveyard 9 times out of 10, just to be able to power it up, and that took a little bit longer. Not very viable, but nowadays there's much better ways. With this card, the highest attack I've gotten it up to was literally 10,000, so I'm quite happy with that one. With Golden Homunculus, it was something like 9,000 and something, but still, you know, that's OTK material right there, and either way, it's something that's going to be quite difficult for your opponent to deal with, at least in conventional means. Now, one thing to note about these 2 cards is that even though the attack and defense can go up really high, I mean, with Golden Homunculus, he starts out at 1500 attack and defense, but it increases for 300 of each of your remove and play cards. And with Gren, maju, Eiza, a lot easier to get out because he's not a level 6 like this guy. In fact, he's level 3, so he bypasses things like Gravity Bind. For any of you anti-meta players out there, and it's 400 points per card that's removed from play. He doesn't have a base attack and defense, but it just means that if you get at least 5 cards removed from play, then that's at least 2,000 attack and defense points straight away. It's quite handy. So, like I said, one thing to note is they don't have a lot of ways to defend themselves. They can get popped really easily by other card effects. So I've come up with a few ways to get around that, or should I say, really just one way, really. So let's put that away. So then there's the Dimensional Alchemist. Now, I'm actually running him at 3. The reason for this will become really clear later on, because deck consistency is actually really important here, because I need to be able to know that I'm going to at least be able to draw at least one of these guys at some point and use his effect. So his effect, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know it already, but once per turn you can activate the effect to remove from play the top card of your deck, which can be a risky play sometimes, but it can also be a good thing in this deck. And give this card 500 attack until the end phase, so it goes up to 800 attack. And when this card is destroyed and sent from your side of the field to the graveyard, you can select one of your remove from play monsters and return it to your hand. So the reason why he's really good is because there's sometimes cards which you want to recycle. So Gren, maju, Eiza and your Golden Homunculus are decent targets, but there's also another card in here which is really going to be your primary target to bring back if need be. But in all, he slowly increases the amount of cards you have removed from play, which is what you want to be constantly doing with this deck. Plus, he can be a little bit of a beat stick sometimes. And bait, because as soon as he loses that extra attack points at the end of the turn, your opponent's going to want to attack him. I mean, they're not going to think too much about that. Most people literally just do attack him straight away. And when they do, you get his effect. So that's happy days. So this is the one which I'm thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to keep running these 2 or not, but DD Warrior Lady, the reason why I play it is just because it banishes itself. So basically, when your opponent, when this card battles an opponent's monster, so it doesn't even matter which turn it is, your opponent's yours. After damage calculation, you can remove and play that monster and this card. So it banishes their monster, which can get rid of some problem monsters, but at the same time, it also banishes this one, which gives you a bit more advantage in this particular deck. So that's alright. Now, I'm running 3 DD Scout Planes, which might seem a bit clunky to some people, but just bear in mind that with this particular deck, things are going to get removed all the time, and you will need some field advantage, plus there's a few more reasons to run 3 DD Scout Planes. So Scout Planes even. So one of the reasons though is because they always come back to your field if they've been banished. So when they do at the end phase, they come back to your field in attack positions, so it's a bit vulnerable, but it means that it's an easy tribute for Golden Homunculus. So that's one fairly good reason. The other side of it as well is just because you might want to defend your life points, so it's really up to you how you want to play it. Sometimes it's just a good card just to discard and get back later on. Yeah, it could be quite interesting to play. I mean, I've never gone wrong with playing this, and I've got no problem playing this at 3, so I'm quite happy keeping that in as it is. Now, an interesting card that I didn't even think of, I just came across it by accident, was Gaia the Polar Knight. And you'll see why very quickly, because there's a lot of synergy between all the cards that are in this deck, which is what I really like. It's got 2 effects, and you can only use each of the effects once per turn. It's the same with his counterpart, Gaia the Midnight Sun, which I've included in there. So the first effect, you contribute 1 other dark monster, so that has to be on your field, and add 1 light level 4 warrior type monster from your deck to your hand, and then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. So a fair target will be the Midnight Sun if you need him, or it could just be DD Warrior Lady. It's up to you. You can banish 1 light monster from your graveyard, then target 1 monster you control. It gains 500 attack, so it could be a little bit useful. It's not likely I will use a secondary effect unless I just need to get rid of something out of my graveyard so I can increase the amount of cards I've got banished. The primary effect that I'm interested in is the fact that they contribute 1 dark monster, and in certain situations that can actually give you a bit of an advantage with this deck, especially if you've got cards which remove everything from play, which I'll go into. And then Gaia the Midnight Sun. So in this case, you can tribute 1 of the light monster, target a dark warrior type monster from your deck, and move it to your hand, and then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. So it's the same effect, just the opposite way around. The secondary effect is you can banish 1 dark monster from your graveyard and target 1 monster in the field. It loses 500 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So you get to banish a dark monster from your graveyard, which I'm quite happy about. That's more of a useful effect than that one, although that can be useful in certain situations. So keeping these at 1 each, because I don't want to go too overboard with them. Sometimes it's very difficult to pull them off. I've tried them at higher numbers, 2 each, 3 each. Nah, it's not good, and plus they don't have a lot of attack and defense there, so they tend to get squished very quickly before you can even use them to the best effect. So it's best just to have 1 or 2, and you'll only really find you'll either use one or the other. So on to really what I consider the trump card of this deck, and that is Necro Face. And probably a lot of you saw this coming, because in Modern Chaos, Necro Face is an absolute beast. He's currently at 2, but even at 2, he's absolutely amazing, because there's some really easy ways to get his effect. When this card is normal summoned, shuffle all banished cards into the deck. And this card gains 100 attack for each card shuffled into the main deck. Now, that effect by itself is not what I'm aiming for primarily, but in certain situations that can really save your neck, because if you've managed to have a bit of a reckless play and you've banished loads of monsters without being able to have anything on your field, or you've gotten rid of everything you need, this can basically save that deal for you, because all you need to do is just summon it, you get all your cards back, and it gains attack for that. So it's not going to get really powerful. I mean, the highest I've managed to get it up to was 3,700. It's still a nice little beat stick. Considering it's a level 4, I mean, this deck is packed with level 4 and level 3 monsters, which are going to get high attacks from almost nowhere, it seems. But anyway, that's the secondary effect as far as I'm concerned. The main effect for me, and in terms of the main strategy of this deck, is that if this card is banished, each player banishes 5 cards from the top of their deck, and of the entire deck. And let's see, what's this saying? Or the entire deck, and if it's less than 5. Okay, that's actually, I didn't read that before. So if they don't have 5 cards, it basically means they can't weasel their way out of it, saying, "Oh, I don't have 5 cards. I can't banish this many cards at all." They have to banish everything if it's less than 5 cards, which basically means when it moves to their turn, you know, on their next turn, they're going to lose anyway. So happy days. Okay, but anyway. Like I say, it banishes the top 5 cards from your deck. Now, the reason why I like this card in particular, over cards like, was it Pot of Riches? I think it was. I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of the name of the card anymore, but it was one of the new pot cards. It's ridiculously priced. It's about, what is it? I think the best price I've seen so far is 55 quid, and I think that's cheap. That was on eBay. But still, at the moment, that card is really expensive, and for obvious reasons, because with that card, what you do is you play it, you draw 2 cards, but then you just banish the top 10 cards of your deck face down. Now, that means that with your power cards like Gren, Maju, Eiza, and Golden Homunculus, they're going to get powered up really quickly. And I saw a video recently, I believe it was from a YouTuber called Eiza. I think his name is Eiza, he calls himself. But he ran a version of the deck which I think only had something like 6 monsters, which I can understand why he did it, because based on that type of play where you're going to be burning loads of cards, you're really only going to need a few monsters anyway. So that made sense, but at the same time, it also means that there's a good chance of having a really bad hand, which can happen. But the reason why I built this deck this way is because, 1, I want consistency, and 2, I'm not really going to spend, just, this is me personally, I'm not going to spend like 55 to 60 to 70 quid on a single card. If I can find a way to get the same effect, the same strategy, or maybe even a better one with less money, I will do it, because at the end of the day, I mean, if I win the lottery, happy days, I'll go balling in, I'll be going for all, but the fact is I haven't, so let's keep it realistic. Now, so that's another reason why I like the card, is because simply I've got loads of these, I can make this deck several times over if I want. It's awesome. But anyway, it means that your cards don't go face down though, because when they face down, you can't get them back. So if you've got a card like Dimensional Alchemist, he's not going to target any of them, because he can't get any of them back. They all face down. With this card, when they banish, they go face up, which means they can be targeted, which means you can get Gren, Maju, Eiza back when you need him, or anything else back if you need it back. So it is really useful. So it's a good card. It saves your life if you overplay the amount of cards you banish, and plus it's targetable by your 2 knights. So your Midnight Sun can banish him from the graveyard if he somehow ends up there. So let's say you play him to save yourself from banishing too many monsters. He ends up in the graveyard, play Gaia, and you get his effect again, and you rinse and repeat. And as far as the Polar Knight, you can attribute him from your field, but to really get the best out of that, you really need to be having Macrocosmos or Dimensional Fissure, which I do have in here. So anyway, so these are these done. Onto the last cards now. I've got 3 Cyber Ouroboros. It's not necessary to run 3. The reason I'm running 3 is purely because I know that 9 times out of 10, I might only see 1 or 2. Saying that though, there have been a few plays where I've seen all 3 get banished at the same time, which has been quite hilarious actually, because if you look at his effects, when this card's removed from play, well, it still says removed from play, actually currently that's meant to say banished, but all the same, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to draw 1 card. So the reason why I'm playing it, because it's not really giving your hand advantage, it's just because it's speeding up your play. So you can speed up your deck, get rid of potentially dead cards in your hand, although this particular deck doesn't really have dead cards. I find it's really difficult to be in a situation where you've got dead cards. Okay, so that's the monsters. I'll go on to the extra deck at the end of this. Onto the spells. So this is where things get interesting. Now I'm running 1 Soul Release. I'd love to running 2 or 3, but in reality, when you're running 2 or 3 of Soul Release, it's extremely clunky. And you never get to use it to its best of ability, so you're really better off just having 1. So there's 2 reasons why I run it. 1 is because it just banishes cards out of my graveyard if I need to. It's a good way of clearing them out, or it's a good way of clearing my opponent's graveyard out. So happy days, there's 5 cards gone. Plus I can use it, I can split the effect between both graveyards, so it could be like 3 of theirs and 2 of mine, or vice versa. And more importantly, it means that if I do end up recycling Necro Face, sticking it and ending it with it being in my graveyard, I can just banish that again. Even if there's 2 of them, I can banish both of them and get both of their effects. So yeah, it's just a useful card to have in, but not one to have too many of. Then I've got Allure of Darkness. Now I'm running this as 2. The reason I'm running at a 2 is purely because I know that at least one of them is going to end up getting banished straight from the top of my deck. more 9 times out of 10 it does happen. But the reason why I like this card is because I can draw 2 cards, Happy Days, and then basically banish 1 dark monster from my hand, which can either be a Cyber Ouroboros, which again I get another draw effect, or it can be a DD Scout, which then it gets special summoned to my field at the end phase of the turn, or it can be a Necro Face, meaning that I get its effect. So especially if I play the same Necro Face again and again and again, if you capitalize on that, Happy Days. And if you actually do manage to get both Allure of Darknesses, this deck can start getting really insane, to be honest. It starts getting really good. It doesn't run as fast as the Pot of Riches version, and excuse me for getting it wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is Pot of Riches, because there's so many different pot cards at the moment. It could be Pot of Desires. No, I think it's Pot of Riches. It must be Pot of Riches. Okay, I'll have to look that one afterwards. But anyway, so yeah, this deck will play a little bit slower than that, but it's a bit more defensive and it's a lot more consistent. And that is something I prefer a lot more to just hoping that a card will come out, playing it, and then potentially completely wrecking my own play within the first turn, because that's what happens with that card. If you play that pot card and you go for that banish 10 from the top of your deck, things can go really badly very quickly, and I find you either get a really good start or you get an absolutely horrible start. I played it on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro just to test it out, which for me, I know that's not the same as playing it with real cards. It's always better playing with real cards for some reason, but I like being able to know that I'll be able to recycle and repeat, rinse and repeat, and if something goes wrong, I can change strategy, and that's something you can do with this deck quite easily. Okay, so then we got Golden Sarcophagus. I'm running 2 of them. Now the reason why I'm doing that is because it's just a really easy thing. If I got 2 in my hand, then one is just a luxury. I can use anything I want. The other one is going to be used specifically to get Necro Face from a deck to the banished zone. The reason why is because straight away Necro Face gets his effect because he is banished face up, and then you get Necro Face back in your hand. Then you can Allure of Darkness, or if you end up having to summon him, or whatever the case may be. There's loads of things you can do, but either way you get that effect straight away. So yeah, definitely happy having that card in. I'm only running 2 because I want to have space to run everything else. Then I've got Mystical Space Typhoon. I think I've got 3 different rarities here. Yeah, so I've got Golden Ghosts, and then I've got just Golden Ultimate, and then I've got a Super Rare. Not that it's important, but yeah, I just like it. Shiny things. So 3 Mystical Space Typhoons, just because, why not? You always need to clear the back row. And a Dimensional Fissure. It's currently at 1 as far as the ban list is concerned, but it works at 1 too. I'm not complaining. It does what it needs to do. Basically, what this card does, any monster sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead, or banished, as the current erratas will say. I've considered other cards like Skull Invitation, but I find them a little bit too slow. I prefer cards like that. You just have to be aware that that card is going to be an instant target, because the second you play it, everyone's going to know what your game is. So you got to be careful with your plays. Okay, so onto the traps. So I've got Bottomless Trap Hole. It's really straightforward. I mean, this deck revolves around banishing cards, so I thought, why not? Plus, it's really handy, to be honest. It's currently at 1, and that's because when your opponent summons a monster that has 1,500 attack or more, and it doesn't matter how they summon it, just the fact that they summon it, then you destroy that monster, and if you do, you banish it instead of sending it to the graveyard. So it just gets rid of some monsters. Some monsters do come back. I've had problems using this against Stardust decks and Cosmos. There's infamous Cosmos, real pain in the asses. But in all other situations, this card's really going to help you. And at the very least, even if you are against one of those problem monster decks, at least it's going to buy you some time if you need to. So then we got Macrocosmos, which of course is the much better version of Dimensional Fissure. So when this card revolves, you can special summon 1 Helios Primordial Sun from your hand or deck, and while this card is face up on the field, any card sent to the graveyard is banished. That it means spells, traps, anything just goes straight to the graveyard. Now, the first effect of it, though, summoning Helios. Now, Helios is another monster that gains attack and defense based on the amounts of cards you have banished, but it's only 100 per, and I believe it's per face-up monster. face a banished monster, that is. So with Helios, I did try playing because I thought, if I play this, then I'm gonna get a Helios free. And okay, no, it doesn't rack up a lot. It's with this type of deck, it won't go that quickly. You gotta have a Helios specific deck to be able to make that work, or you gotta have Helios, Deus Magius Deus, and Trice Magius Deus, and then your deck just completely changes. It really does. So personally, I thought, no, I'm going to stay away from that. I'm just going to keep it for its second effect, which is really the primary effect as far as I'm concerned. That's all I wanted for. It's like a second dimensional fissure, just only better. So happy days. Okay. Now, on to what I mentioned earlier about these cards. So your big powerhouses not having a lot of defense. In terms of everything else, so attack and defense, sure, they can hold their own, but in terms of card effects, they don't hold a feather to a lot of cards in this game. So I decided to play really defensive here and get 3-dimensional Guardian, which I don't know if everyone knows this card just yet because it is fairly new. But in terms of what it does, you can activate it by targeting one attack position monster that you control. So it absolutely has to be an attack position. And that card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So it doesn't matter whether that card is targeting it or not. So even if someone dark holes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't get destroyed. And if the target monster leaves the field, then you destroy this card. So it's got that effect. But the fact is, you got your Golden Homunculus out or your Gren maju. You play this card, it can't possibly get destroyed. And unlike a lot of cards that have these really great effects, if this card gets destroyed, it doesn't do anything to the monster that's on your field. So if you want to, you could stick 2 of these. Even though I wouldn't recommend it, I'd still recommend keeping one face down just to be on the safe side, because chances are that's going to get targeted very quickly. But still, that is a ton of security, and the reason why it's really good with this particular deck is because you know that your trump cards, your real power cards, are going to get really high power in terms of attack and defense. And additionally, even if you don't necessarily use it on one of those, there are some situations which I've come into which I've ended up in a really difficult situation to handle, where I've got one monster in the field, my opponent's got a lot more than that, and this card has literally just saved me just by playing one of them on something like a Dimensional Guardian, and then once it's in attack position, bearing the brunt of the damage for that turn and turning into defense position afterwards. Then I got some solid defense and I can keep using his effect. So I've had plays that have gone like that. Those are some pretty tough plays, but primarily you really want to be using this for Golden Homunculus and Gren maju, because that means that your opponent can't destroy them with any conventional means, and they're going to have a really hard time with doing anything else to them with any other card effects, even monster card effects. So I love this card personally. Played it, tested it, it absolutely does work. And running a 3 is not a problem in this deck, because this deck just, you banish stuff from the deck so quickly that, it's just one of those cards that you want to be running a 3 anyway. Okay, so finishing up, so we've got 3-dimensional Prison, which again, it's a deck based around banishing, so that should be really obvious. When an opponent's monster attacks, declares an attack, target the attacking monster and banish the card. My only gripe with this is the fact that it has to target. I'm not a massive fan of that, purely because there's a lot of card effects that, especially during the battle phase, will negate other cards or stop other cards from activating, or negate cards that target during the battle phase, or just negate cards in general. I mean, if you haven't come across White Knight Dragon, then you're in for a treat. That's a fun monster to play around. It's not fun at all. So anyway, I'm running 3 of those because it is really handy, and it buys me a lot of time. That's one thing about this deck. I'm not concerned with ultimately getting rid of everything from their side of the field. There's hardly anything I need to worry about that much, unless we're talking about the new Spirit what they call Destiny board monsters, in which case they absolutely have to go. But aside from that, all I need to do is keep my power monsters on the field, and it's happy days. Now, this is the card that I'm sort of I'm not sure about. So I'm running 3 Dark Bribe. Now, if anybody knows what else I should run instead of these, let me know, and just give me a little sentence to justify it too, because I really want to understand the logic. The reason why I've played this is because basically it doesn't have a lot of defense against back row, which is its main problem. If you look at the deck, it plays it plays really defensively, but builds up to an incredible offense. But if you have that kind of play, back row is going to be your enemy, and you'll find that'll be the same case with a lot of the other decks. I mean, my dinosaur deck, I've been having a pain in the ass working out the back row because it's really a nightmare in some situations. I mean, this is the one thing I've had a headache over. So anyway, I've played 3 Dark Bribes. I don't really care if I give my opponents a free card in their hand, because that's what it does. When your opponent activates a spell or trap card, you just negate that activation, destroy it, and your opponent draws a card. Don't care if they get a card unless they're playing a Exodia deck, in which case this is not a good card to play in that kind of situation. But the fact is it negates something, and chances are what I'm going to be avoiding them negating or destroying is going to be my Dimensional Guardian. That's really why I'm going to want to play this, because that's what's going to be defending my main monsters. Everything else is pretty much going to survive. Or if it ends up getting destroyed, there's going to be a way to capitalize on that. Okay, so let me know if there's any better ways to handle anti-back row, which you can think that would actually work in this particular deck, so this specific deck which I've showed you. If you do know, let me know. I'll be absolutely happy to hear it, because I love listening to other people's ideas. So anyway, on to the extra decks. Now, straight away, I just want to tell you that this deck isn't reliance in any way, shape, or form on the extra deck. The reason why I have this in there is for a simple form of logic. It's just that if you can have extra deck, that can potentially happen, do put it in, because there could be sometimes which these cards will come in handy, which you might not have prepared for before, but they just do. So the first card I've got in here is Evil Storm Ouroboros. So I kept with the theme of cards that can banish. Just because I can. So 3 level 4 monsters, and there's loads of level 4 monsters in there. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz from this card and activate one of the effects. Each effect can only be activated once whilst this card is face up on the field. That's not to say you can't get the card back somehow, but with this deck, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be worried about it. So each of the effects goes, so you can target 1 card in your opponent controls and return that to the hand. So if they have an Xyz monster or a Synchro that you've got problems dealing with, in particular, return it to the hand, and then they lose the materials. They have to start all over again. It could be a real pain in the ass for them, or it could be just anything else that that's. Never mind monsters. It says just 1 card, so it could be spell cards, trap cards, pendulum monsters, anything. So happy days. So that's one thing. And then the second one is that you can send 1 card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. If you're up against an Exodia deck, that's actually a really handy thing to have, because if you manage to get a right pick and get it out of their hand, that can be a good thing. Although Exodia has gotten a little bit more interesting now, it can actually work with having Exodia in the graveyard, which can be a pain sometimes. But people really need to know what they're doing when they're building that kind of deck. Otherwise, if you just happen to have a hunch of what they've got in their hand, or if they've only got 1 card in their hand, might as well remove it to just eliminate the advantage. And aside from that, then you got target 1 card on your opponent's in your opponent's graveyard and banish the target. So again, it just means that if they got a problem monster that keeps coming back or that wants to be in the graveyard, Fluffles are an idea. I've had some nightmare games against them. Fluffles and Fluffle pals. They love being in the graveyard. Banish anything that you don't want to see in there, and just praise God that they don't bring it back. Although with this deck, things that are in the graveyard are quite vulnerable against this deck. So. That's actually quite a good thing about it, but it's also a 2750 beast stick, so who knows? I mean, it could be really useful. I mean, there are some situations where you're not going to want to attack with the other level 4s, and are not going to want to even keep them on the field. Sometimes it can be more of a disadvantage having them on the field in the first place. So that's quite handy to actually have in there, just in case there's that one play, and I have played it before, at least just once. Now I've also got number 96 Dark Mist. So that requires 3 level 2 monsters, and there's a total of 6 level 2 monsters in this deck. So it is fairly possible to bring this out, especially with DD Scout bringing itself back all the time. So once per battle, during either player's turn, when an attack is declared involving this card, it could have just said when this card is involved in battle, but hey. And an opponent's so between this card and an opponent's monster, you can detach one Xyz card from this card and halve the attack of your opponent's monster, and this card gains the same amount of attack. Now, it specifically says it gains it because if you look over here, it's got 100 attack already. So if they're going for an OTK or something ridiculous, if they attack this card to start off with, I mean that's just pure stupid, because unless they really don't even take any time to look into what it does. But the fact is, you just detach an Xyz. It's got 3 of them to start with, so it's not like it's going to be going anywhere very soon. And let's just give an example. You have 5-headed dragon on the field, just an example, and they attack with that. You drop its attack by 2,500. This one gains 2,500, but it becomes 2,500, so 2,600. So their monster gets destroyed. And yeah, you've just eliminated one of the most powerful monsters, and that can happen quite a lot. I mean, think about the amount of times we've been up against, Cyber Dragon decks, and then of course they're big, massive cards. What are they? The Chimeritic Fortress Dragon, not Cyber End Dragon so much. Chimeritic Over Dragon, I believe. Yeah. When that thing attacks, there's been a lot of times when that's just an OTK straight away. This is an OTK blocker. If you get to the point where you got three monsters on your side of the field, I mean, this can just be a bit of a trolley play, and it can actually be quite a defensive play, because once you get this onto your field, it's not to say you can't have Dimension Fissure. You send 3 of your level 2s, and each of them will get the effect in this particular deck when they're banished. If you have Fissure or Macrocosmos on the field, so you keep sending them away whenever you get this thing's effect, and yeah. You'll keep getting them back to your field as well, so you're never going to lose field advantage. But it just means that your opponent's not going to want to attack this, and if you do attack with it, it's pretty much a guaranteed win, unless they happen to be in defense mode and they're using something like Exod or something. It's something really super defensive. This will have problems against a Super Samurai. I can tell you that already. Super heavy Samurai, I mean. But against everything else, it's a pretty solid card. Okay, so that's pretty much everything from the deck. The only other thing that I thought of was potentially adding in the Lich card, Shadow Lich, I believe. Just because I've got 3 level 3 Gren Maju, but like I say, I don't want to be getting rid of Gren Maju. I don't want to be putting him in a position where he's not in the field, or not in the graveyard, or not removed from play, because that's what happens with Xyz. Because if that happens, it means I can't easily get him back to my field for a decent move. Not to say it can't happen, it just means that it's just that awkward situation. Plus, Lich isn't that useful. I'm still trying to play around with how I'm going to use them. I just happen to have one which I really want to use. I'm a bit like that. Okay, so anyway, that's everything for this deck. 40 cards in total. So yeah, let me know if you do see this, and if you do like it, do tell me about it. If you do play Chaos, let me know, because that's exactly what this strategy is called. It's Chaos. In this case, it's Chaos with Necro Face, a few Xyz, and of course Gren Maju, which is really the boss card of this deck as far as I'm concerned. And aside from that, if you like this deck, the way I presented it and how I've gone about its construction, my strategy, my particular tactics that I like to use, then give this a like, give it a good old thumbs up, and of course subscribe for more, because I will be bringing out another deck very soon. Sorry, I'm losing my voice now. Anyway, the next deck that I'll be bringing out will be my dinosaur deck. So do stay tuned for that. I was actually going to bring it out today, but let's be honest, this deck is just absolutely awesome. I just couldn't wait. This is definitely the deck that I am going to be playing. Overall, I will still play the other decks, don't get me wrong. The Machina deck, as far as I'm concerned, it's a solid deck, but this is the type of deck I was playing back in Invasion of Chaos, and I just love it because this is what I like the most. In terms, this is like my ultimate sort of strategy back in the day, because nobody else at that time when I was playing Chaos, no one was playing it the way I was playing it. Everyone was playing Chaos Emperor Dragon, which was a pain in the ass. But I played pulling the rug whenever Chaos Emperor Dragon came up, and I just completely pissed off my opponents because I was fully anti-meta even back then. And I used to play Gren Maju, and people would think, oh, that was a useless card, but back then it didn't have as much support. Right now, it's got loads of support. that's why I'm going for it. Anyway, stay tuned. I'll see you next time, and have a great day. Bye.